As this trial comes to an end, as we approach the conclusion of the long and painful testimony of experts, and the sometimes interesting testimony of the parties that were involved, we've seen the evidence, we've seen the different sides that have been presented. But now there are three things that we have to consider. 3 points that must be addressed in order to properly understand what really happened and who should bear responsibility in this case. First, you have the man. The man is Mr. Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez was a family man. He had a wife, happily married to his high school sweetheart, and his young son, whom Mr. Ramirez enjoyed playing basketball with in the backyard. He had a job, and at that job he had friends. With those friends, he enjoyed playing softball. He played on a softball team. And speaking of his job, he was a hard worker. He had the same job for a number of years, the same profession, the same occupation. That was the man. The man was Mr. Ramirez. Then there was a mistake. This is where the dispute comes in. The dispute is not about who Mr. Ramirez was, but rather it was about the mistake that was made. Mr. Ramirez was driving late one night, coming home from a night with his friends. He came across a car that was traveling very slowly. Not an unusual event. Anyone who has driven the streets of Chicago knows that drivers whose actions defy reason are not uncommon. Mr. Ramirez was annoyed, as anyone would be. I myself have been annoyed in similar situations. He was annoyed, and he honked his horn. He tried to go around the car, and did go around the car. He then happened upon the car later, and the car pulled over. Mr. Ramirez, again very annoyed, followed the car to the side street. It was a mistake, but it was not a mistake that warranted any sort of serious consequences. It was a simple. Was it a lapse in judgment? Perhaps. Should it have happened? Perhaps not. But it was a mistake. Mr. Ramirez then got into a fight with the driver of the car, who he did not know to be a police officer. Mr. Ramirez thought that the driver was simply another motorist on a public road. Words were exchanged. Both drivers exchanging heated words. Then both drivers got out of their vehicles, and the words escalated into blows. Again, a mistake. Were both parties mistaken? Yes, both parties were mistaken. The police report states that you heard testimony that that the officers could have easily driven away. Mr. Ramirez pulled up beside them. They could have easily driven their car away and avoided any conflict whatsoever, but they did not. The words continued, the shouting continued, and then Mr. Ramirez heard words that he was not expecting. Police. He immediately stopped fighting. He immediately began getting up off the ground where he had fallen. And then a great mistake occurred. Not simply a mistake regarding driving, not simply a mistake regarding a lapse in judgment, but a mistake that took a person's life, put a person's life at stake. Mr. Ramirez was shot by Officer Walden. So we have the man, Mr. Ramirez, the family man. He was a hard-working man. We have the mistake, an altercation on a public road, and then a great mistake on the part of of Officer Walden, shooting Mr. Ramirez. Then we have the mystery. Why did it happen? We know there was a fight, but people don't get shot over a simple fight, much less a police officer. A police officer who has training, who has rules, regulations, who knows that a person should not be shot for no reason. Not only that, but there should be strong, compelling, undeniable reason before a person is shot. This doesn't seem to exist. It's been said that Mr. Ramirez had a knife. The knife was found at the scene of the crime, but it was closed. It was a jackknife. It was a locking blade knife, and it was closed. It had no fingerprints on it. There was no fingerprints on the knife. There was no blood on the knife. Nothing to connect the knife to Mr. Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez, we've heard through deposition, his wife has stated that he did not have such a knife. Mr. Ramirez has said that he did not have such a knife. Mr. Ramirez stated that at the criminal trial was the first time that he saw the knife. There's also the question of was Officer Levy actually stabbed? He was treated for a small cut on his shoulder, but what evidence was there that it was caused by Mr. Ramirez, or that he was stabbed at all? What are the clothes that he was wearing? If Officer Levy was actually stabbed, would not the clothes, the jacket, the shirt that he was wearing, would there not be a hole? Would that not be admitted into evidence? There's nothing to connect the knife or the wound that Officer Levy received to Mr. Ramirez. None whatsoever. So there's a great mystery here. Why was Mr. Ramirez shot? Was he shot because he was an annoyance to the officers? Possibly. Was he shot because he was an inconvenience? Possibly. Why was he shot? If Mr. Ramirez was not threatening the life of one of the officers, he should not have been shot. And as we've seen, there was no evidence saying that he was threatening the life of the partner. We have the testimony of the officers, but none of the hard evidence supports those claims. The knife does not support the claims. The clothes that could support the claims, they're mysteriously gone. Nothing supports the claims of the officers that Mr. Ramirez had a knife. So we have the man. We have Mr. Ramirez, who has a good reputation as a family man. We've seen what kind of a family man he is. We've seen what kind of a father and a husband he is. We've seen that there was a mistake. We've seen that the officers made a mistake, and Mr. Ramirez would be the first to tell you that the evening should not have gone as it did. There should not have been words and blows exchanged, but they were. But those are forgivable. What is not forgivable is a police officer going far in excess of the force that should have been used and shooting a man simply because he was an annoyance, simply because he was an inconvenience to the police officers. Officer Walden should be held to account for his actions. We've seen the results of the gunshot, the severe injury, the fact that Mr. Ramirez cannot go back to work, the fact that he still suffers in other ways. Personally, he can't play basketball with his son, he can't play softball with his buddies. Mr. Ramirez's life has been drastically changed, drastically altered by the actions of Officer Walden. So as you consider these things, consider the man, Mr. Ramirez. Consider the mistake. Consider it for what it is, a simple mistake that led to a great mistake on the part of Officer Walden. And finally, consider the mystery. What really was the provocation for the gunshot? There's no evidence saying that it was anything other than annoyance on the part of the officers. I ask you to consider these things, and I ask you to find in favor of Mr. Ramirez.